Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our Women in Education Fireside Chat series. I'm Maura Russo, and I'm a client partner at Facebook on our education team, partnering with organizations in the education industry to accelerate their business growth and deliver meaningful impact. In this series, we're connecting with female clients in the education industry with our primary goal focused on facilitating conversations with women in leadership roles. We know our clients don't always have the time or the access to connect with peers, but that shared experiences often lead to both professional and personal growth. At the same time, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused massive disruption in the education industry in particular, and has impacted our professional identities in meaningful ways. We also acknowledge the impact the pandemic has had on each of us personally and the many roles we play. And with public health circumstances still in flux, it seems this impact may persist for the foreseeable future. So today we'll take some time to zoom out and create the space for these important conversations. Today I have the absolute pleasure of connecting with Kulsum Qasim. Kulsum is the Chief Marketing Officer of Prodigy Education, one of North America's fastest growing ed tech companies. Prodigy Math Game is used by more than 150 million registered users across the world. The company's mission is to help every student in the world love learning, which is why it ensures all the educational math content in its game is free to access. Kulsum, thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation. To kick us off, could you please introduce yourself and a bit about Prodigy Education to our viewers?
Absolutely. Thanks, Maura, for having me. Happy to have this chat. First off, I'm really excited to join you today. My passion for women in leadership, marketing, and education really comes together in this particular forum, and that doesn't happen often. So thank you for the opportunity. A little bit about me. I've been a marketer at heart ever since Amanda Woodward put her first pitch on Melrose Place, and I just never looked back. I've been in the ed tech industry for over 8 years now, most recently leading a global marketing team at Pearson Education, and now as the CMO of Prodigy Education for the last year. I'm also a proud Canadian, mom of 2. So if you do see actually some of the kids roll in, that's just how it goes at this point. A little bit about Prodigy Education. We just celebrated our 10th birthday in June this year, which is a huge milestone for the company. It's truly amazing to see what started as an undergraduate project by our founders and co-CEOs, Alex and Rohan, turn into Prodigy's Math Game, which has really disrupted the edutainment industry. Their vision was to make learning math as engaging as playing a video game, and they wanted to create a program that would help every student in the world love learning, and that remains Prodigy's mission today. So super excited to be here and chat with you about this important topic.
Thank you, Kulsum, and happy 10th birthday to Prodigy Education. I'm so appreciative for this opportunity to hear your story, and I'm sure our viewers are too. Speaking of your story, I've found leaders tend to have a very unique and personal narrative about their journey to a particular role. So I'd love to learn a bit about your path to becoming CMO of Prodigy Education.
Yeah, my journey's been super interesting, I think. I started off education is at the forefront of everything that I do. So start with my education. I started off in computer science. I was enrolled at the University of Toronto in their undergrad comp sci program. Very quickly, I realized that computer science was not for me, even though I actually do secretly love math, calculus, and algebra. I graduated with a business degree from there, and my first job was for a company called Essential Brands that made licensed Mattel and Hot Wheels bath products, which was kind of the first best job I ever had. And in reflecting and getting prepared kind of for this conversation and for us to talk, I started thinking about how my experience when I started my career journey has impacted where I am today. And at that time, actually, a little unheard of was that working at Essential Brands, it was a company led 100% by women. The CEO was a woman, the CMO was a woman, the chief revenue officer was a woman. And it was my first impression of a professional career outside of school. And it was so beautiful because I saw myself in every single person that worked there. I didn't realize it then, and kind of rethinking about my journey, immersing myself in an experience and seeing strong women is exactly what has shaped me today and has been a huge impact on my personal leadership style. I think that if I think about it, normalizing women in leadership, and it shouldn't be an anomaly that I worked at a company with 100% of the employees being women, but it is. It should be normalized, and I think that's exactly how we need to show up in the industry today. I learned so much from these strong leaders, especially my first manager, Cheryl. She was empathetic. She also was really focused on performance culture and driving results, and it really formed how I lead my team today. So every role, from marketing manager to director to global VP to now CMO, I've kept a few things consistently top of mind based on my experience. One is to work hard, put your all into it, learn along the way. Don't shy away from really immersing yourself in the experiences. Two is, I say this all the time to my team, we aren't in the business of saving lives. So let's not act like that, right? Like let's be okay with the journey we've chosen. Patience, consistency, empathy, they're all key tenets of a high performance culture, and they don't have to come at the expense of being stressed all the time and thinking that if we don't finish that one thing tonight, that tomorrow will be a disaster, because that's just not the case. And bringing your full self to work. I personally have been very encouraged to do this since my first role. And ever since have been very comfortable just being me in all aspects during crazy board meetings and executive meetings. Bringing my personal self to the table is super important.
I mean, you just gave us so much knowledge and wisdom in that story of your professional journey thus far. So first of all, just thank you for all that you just shared. One point you touched on was the idea that high performance must equal high stress. And something for me that I've been very mindful and intentional about is avoiding burnout. And I listened to a podcast episode recently on the differences between stress and burnout, and how important it is to navigate both in healthy ways. So thank you for sharing. I also think you mentioned such an interesting point at the end of bringing your full and authentic self to work. Another topic that many of us, myself included, have reflected a lot on, especially with working from home. And can you share with us how you define your full self? Do you have any advice for our viewers and for other women in business of how they can bring their full selves to their roles?
Yeah, it is a struggle, and I don't want to make it feel like it's easy all the time, because I feel like as women, we constantly think about the perception of us and how people will react to something we say or think of it. But as I want to make sure that people understand too, is there's this perception in business is the higher up you get in terms of a leadership role, the more consistently buttoned up and polished you need to be. You need to have all the right answers. And I'm probably the complete opposite of that. And I embrace it. I relish in not always having the right answer and not being the smartest person in the room, because I'm very open to learning and developing myself. I also deeply value personal connections, and that's part of bringing my whole self to work. Is I care about the results, I care about the business outcomes, but I care about the people, and I care about our collective experiences and how I can personally impact working at the company that I'm at, for example. Also, I think it means that I'm okay with saying things like, hey, I need to go step away for 5 minutes to go pray, because that's part of me. I bring my spirituality, I bring my culture, I bring my faith to work, and that's part of me. And I'm very comfortable letting people know that that's a part of who I am. And it actually helps diversify my opinion or diversify the approach that we're taking to solve a solution. So stepping away to do something that's not work related, but is part of my full self is really important. I love having fun. You need to have fun. There's nothing worse than being in a career that fun is not involved, because you're not going to feel like yourself. You're not going to put your entire best foot forward, and you're going to look for ways to exit versus really embracing where we need to be moving the business. So finally, all of those things I've been told by people, which I'm taking on is as part of my full self, is being approachable. I'm very non-hierarchical. Actually, that's like so far away from who I am. So I love having coffee chats with just people in the business, irrespective of their position and what they're focused on, and get to learn a little bit more. I learn new things every day, and you can only do that when you are approachable and when you can really relate to people on a human level versus a business level only. So that's me in a nutshell. Is I'm a little quirky, I'm spiritual, I'm business oriented, and I love to have fun, and I bring that every day to my experiences at work.
I love that. And I'm totally inspired, because I think, working remotely and not seeing many, if not all of our colleagues for a year and a half at this point, it's a good reminder to infuse a little fun and a little levity and joy, laughter into our day-to-day and into our professional lives. Thank you for sharing everything that you just provided. I'm sure you're resonating, and really how indicative of how approachable you are by sort of that explanation. So thank you. Kind of touching on the past 18 months, we mentioned that certainly today, as we're having this conversation, health circumstances and guidance related to COVID-19 in both the US and Canada, where Prodigy Education is based, everything's still shifting and evolving hour by hour, it seems. How have you stayed mindful of leading an organization through a time of immense change and with this baseline of sort of persistent uncertainty?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, actually, Maura. First off, I'm really grateful for the last 5 years of experience that I've had. I've had the pleasure of leading a global remote team, which at the time you wouldn't think is going to help you in the future. But as we sit in the pandemic today and how the workforce and just managing has shifted, it's really been a support system for me. So leading a multidimensional, geographically dispersed team really requires a great deal of flexibility. And I think that's really key to driving forward business outcomes, but also creating a workspace that people want to come to work, even if it's in their house. They want to come to work every single day. To put it into perspective, I've actually never met anyone from my team at Prodigy. I joined right as the lockdown started. And even to take that a step further, since I joined in the last year, we've scaled the marketing team over 100% in less than a year. This is an extreme growth situation, and especially to grow in an unprecedented, unknown environment requires a lot of leadership and empathy. And a couple of few key pieces that I've kept in mind that hopefully will be helpful to the audience as well. I mentioned empathy, but leading with empathy, regardless of being remote or in person, is so important. I think putting yourself in the shoes of your employees, of the business, and seeing things from different vantage points is going to help you as a leader develop and motivate your team so that collectively we achieve our overall results. The other thing that I've really experienced at Prodigy specifically and has paid off very well, I think, for the team is strategic alignment through the organization on priorities. So while marketing has been an evolving and expanding function at Prodigy, I've really made a point to align with leadership and the executive team on the things we will do, but equally important on the things we will not do. And I've heard from my team that this has really helped them propel forward and really become that growth engine for Prodigy, which might not have happened if we were saying yes to everything or felt the need to prioritize everything. If everything's prioritized, nothing is a priority. I think we all can agree on that. And then finally, keeping the longer term in mind. I think people focus, yes, we're in a pandemic. Yes, these are unprecedented and challenging times. But we also need to focus on the longer term. Oftentimes people focus too much on the here and now, leads to knee-jerk reactions, thrashing, and ultimately burnout. And I think it's really important to take that step back and think about what you want to accomplish in the long term and plant those seeds now, because the pace at which we all are running at, especially in the pandemic, is unsustainable. And we need to make sure that we are creating a path to success for ourselves, both personally and professionally. So those really, that kind of balance, that outlook on the fact that we are in a unique circumstance today, but how do we make that work for us? And how do we take all the good that has come out of this situation and apply it to our future, I think is really how leading in this world with such uncertainty has helped for myself and my team.
I couldn't agree more. And, you've kind of sparked a thought for me in that, so much about being a leader and a good colleague and a great teammate is being sort of open to influence, knowing what you know, but also knowing what you don't know, and a willingness to learn and, kind of share this new world that we're, working in, living in, and pivoting our day-to-day to best fit the needs and the demands of our colleagues and our clients. And so your perspective is a refreshing one, and I'm sure one that your team really appreciates.
And there's a secret in that, Maura, is that the leaders of organizations are going through the exact same thing. So this is an equal playing field for everyone, and coming together is really the way to solve this versus dividing ourselves. So that's just I'll let you know that we're all going through it at the same time.
Filling us in on the secrets, but well said. I really I appreciate that. You had mentioned that earlier in the conversation, Cheryl from your earlier career. I'd love to maybe double click on that topic a bit more and talk a bit about mentorship. Personally, as I think you can share, I've always found it incredibly impactful to connect with other women in business and foster these safe and very supportive spaces. Working at an all-female company is certainly an incredible experience to have, especially early in one's career. So I'd love to hear about any notable mentors or mentees throughout your career that have influenced who you are today, and how you bring that authentic full self to your role every day.
Yeah, there's two women in particular, and I mentioned Cheryl at the beginning, but ironically, it's my first ever manager and my last manager before joining Prodigy that I think have had the biggest impact on my career for several reasons. Cheryl just being a super strong woman in being unapologetic for knowing how to run a business and not having to rely too much on what other people's thoughts are, but being very clear on where she wants to go and how she wants to get there. Provided a lot of direction to me as a young employee at their first role. Gave me a lot of perspective on prioritization, directions, and being clear with what I want to do. The other individual that I'd love to bring up is Alexa, who is my who was the CMO of Pearson and was my previous manager before I came to Prodigy. And interestingly enough, my professional relationship with Alexa has been very limited, as in we only worked together for 6 to 8 months, actually. but my personal relationship extends much beyond that. And the fact that we were able to create such a strong personal relationship coming out of a beautiful mentor type of relationship is what sits with me and lasts with me kind of my entire life. So the biggest thing that Alexa specifically taught me, and I take this everywhere, if my team is listening, they'll probably be like, yep, she says that all the time, is that you have to forgive yourself. I feel like as women, we put so many demands on ourselves, question our decisions more than anyone else. We fall into imposter syndrome too, easier than any of our counterparts. And the guilt factor is something that we all go through. Instead of fighting this and blaming ourselves and, you know, in hindsight, thinking about all the things you could have done differently, I'm sure I will reflect on this exact interview and think, why should I have done that? Should I have said that? The real magic is when you forgive yourself and say, it's okay. It's okay. I'm fine. Things are going to be fine. Nothing is going to break down. And that release of like that hold that you had on yourself, but also that release that you allow yourself to have opens up so many beautiful opportunities, ultimately helps you be a better manager, mentor, and friend to others. And it's allowed me, that experience with Alexa has actually allowed me to pay it forward even more so with people that I now mentor in my current role, as well as through organizations like Women in Tech. It's just been liberating in that fact is when you know, Anna from Frozen or Elsa from Frozen had it right. You need to let it go. Like we just need to let it go and be okay with it. So it might sound like really basic advice, but I find sometimes the simplest things are the ones that are the most impactful. So you know, Alexa and I have had a great relationship till today. And she's just an important mentor in my life that helps me think through the big picture. And I think it's really important for women to have other women specifically to lean on and to represent them in both the professional and personal lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the sentiment of being forgiving with yourself. It hits home for me. It's a takeaway I'm definitely going to practice. So I appreciate the reminder on that one. And I couldn't agree more with pay it forward. I had several, you know, women in leadership roles who supported me, guided me, gave me advice earlier in my career. And I tried to be very cognizant of paying it forward and doing the same for those that are starting out and or making career changes or asking for advice. And so I completely believe in that as well. You know, you're bringing up so many great points related to being a female leader and being a female leader in this education industry. So I'd love to learn, you know, what does that mean to you if you had to summarize it for us? And secondarily, you touched a bit on your spirituality earlier. What role does intersectionality play for you, and how does it sort of manifest itself in your leadership style?
Yeah, these are great questions, Maura. Caused me to think really deeply, actually, which I appreciate because, to your point, we need to zoom out sometimes to then zoom back in.
Yeah.
So for the first question that you asked, when I found the intersection of education and marketing, I realized I would never go back. As marketers, we often ask ourselves, are we fulfilled selling that bottle of ketchup or selling that particular service? And I can tell you that I've actually personally never felt more fulfilled than within the education industry. For an example, at Prodigy, knowing everything we do every day is in service to our mission of helping every student in the world love learning. It's kind of a dream career. And I've been in education for that reason for the last 8 years. And I don't see myself actually exiting this industry ever. I have such a passion and respect for it. And I feel like I'm making a really great contribution, which again, you don't always feel in careers like marketing and sales. And with that fulfillment, though, being a female leader in education has both rewarding and challenging times. I'll give you an example of when I was working with a higher ed institution in my previous life. I had gone to visit them face to face. It was a first time I was meeting this client, and it was in a region of the US that I would say maybe diversity isn't very prevalent in all aspects of the definition. And walking into that room of all men executives, a very homogenous looking group, I was instantly hit with the nonverbal cues of assumptions and stereotypes about me. So, for example, does she speak English? Is she well educated? Does she can she relate? Like, is she North American enough? Can she relate to our needs? And I'm really happy to say, obviously, I squashed all of those stereotypes, and I'm proud to say that. But it's interesting when you think about how you feel as a female leader, especially one that is a woman of color, a woman of religious minority as well, to bring your full self to the situation is actually the thing that helps you come out of that situation. So had I been the type of person, for example, in that example, where I maybe then shied away and didn't speak that much, or decided that I wasn't going to comment on something for fear of sounding not as smart as my counterparts, I would have played back into their stereotypes of what they assumed of me when I walked in. Instead, I chose to be my full self, talk about my MBA that I got at Northeastern University that they didn't assume I would have. The fact that I'm born and raised in Canada and lived in Toronto, and especially take the hard work ethic from my immigrant parents who have really instilled that piece in me. And the fact that I know marketing strategy like nobody's business, and actually I can take any of them on, and taking that position instead of the position I could have easily fallen into has helped me not only bring my full self to work, but also gain the respect of my colleagues in a way that differentiates me from those who shy away from these conversations. So while others may see limitations in terms of I'm of a minority group, I see that as a competitive advantage, because I can shock and awe the system and know that there's uniqueness in everyone, and color, race, religion has actually nothing to do with it. It shouldn't be a part of that conversation. It should be who you actually are, bringing that to the conversation. So just a little example of how I've experienced these things around being a female at the leadership table and my entire self. I've really made a point to be authentically me with it.
I think you're incredible, number one. Number two, I think safe to say you shattered those prejudgments or assumptions folks might have made in the room. I also just want to thank you for being so open and honest with me and with our viewers. These are really, really important conversations for us to have, not only as a reminder of how intersectionality plays a role for each of us. We each have, we're not one-dimensional, and it's okay, if not better, to bring those many dimensions to your professional role. But this is also a really great reminder of managing one's own potential bias when we walk into a room, especially if that room is a virtual meeting place, with a colleague or someone we've met for just the first time. And so I really appreciate you sharing that story with us. And I agree. I'm sure you could take on the best of them. And I love that you dazzled the room with your wit and wisdom. So thank you.
One more thing to add to that, it's kind of full circle, especially as you think about education, because that is actually the foundation of where some of these misconceptions or assumptions start, is how we learn, the biases that we grow up with. And imagine being able to shift that in the education system, starting at a very young age. The world, the way that we work would be totally different. It wouldn't be a surprise that there was an all-female company that I worked at my first job. That would be a very normalized thing. And I think that's also an addition to loving marketing and education as a combination of an industry, is the power that we have with education and shifting those mindsets for, underrepresented groups.
Yep. Well said. Completely agree with you. In sort of a similar vein of your best self, we touched a bit on sort of the personal impact that the past 18 months has had on each of us and the tactics we've implemented to get through each day. At Facebook, we often talk about it as fuel, and defining fuel as the habits, the boundaries, the activities that we put into place and practice on a regular basis to get out that energy and motivation we need to do our best work and to be our best selves. Can you share with us what fuels you over the past 18 months and into the future?
Yeah, a couple of things, and I've mentioned some of them before, but this notion of bringing your full self to work is fuel for me. And what that means is part of me that's a spiritual person, part of me that loves family. And a secret, maybe not so secret about me, is like I love throwing themed parties, and I couldn't do that in the pandemic. And so fuel for me was like just getting a themed cake for no reason for me and my two kids and just celebrating because it just provides fuel for me. Real relationships, I've mentioned this before too, but having that authentic conversation with anyone that you work with, shared experiences, new experiences, learning about individuals has really been fuel. I find actually that's a positive part of the pandemic for me, is even though things are really busy, we're all in back-to-back Zoom meetings and we're having Zoom fatigue, having the time to be able to spend one-on-one, because we actually don't have the luxury of putting everybody in a room and having a conversation, but then strategically choosing the times to have one-on-ones allows you to get to a whole new deep level with individuals and understand where they're coming from. It's made me question some of, the way I do business and why am I approaching this? And for example, we have a pretty diverse team at Prodigy, and asking ourselves, hey, why don't we do Spanish ads, like Spanish language ads? Why is it always in English? And just certain things that you might not think of when you're so focused and moving 100 miles a minute versus what you can stop and think and reflect on. So fuel again is human relationships like that. We cannot lose that in this tech heavy world right now. And I encourage everyone to spend however they can, whatever time they can in small groups, just to have a non-agenda meeting. Let's try that. Let's try a meeting with not an agenda and get to know one another, because it's going to help you in the long run.
I love that. And I think when we reflect on some of the hardest days of the past 18 months, it's those days where we didn't have that human connection and we couldn't see family or friends or really spend meaningful time together. And I completely agree with you. I've been really mindful of staying appreciative of the time that we can spend with others, family, friends, colleagues. And I love the idea of a no agenda meeting, and themed cakes just sounds so fun. So
this business is booming right now because we're all ordering cakes just because.
A perfect example of how you bring fun to your daily life for sure. Amazing. Well, I think to close out the dialogue today, let's have more fun with a Facebook tradition of a lightning round. Few quick hit questions just to get to know you a little bit better. First up, you mentioned this earlier, but what was your first job?
So official title brand manager, real title was best first job ever. Creating licensed products for Mattel and Hot Wheels. I didn't have kids then, but I basically just brought it all home and played with everything myself. So it was definitely a dream.
Amazing. Your favorite Netflix show from the past year?
This probably isn't a surprise to many, but Bridgerton all the way. And I'm waiting for season 2. 100% needs to come out like now.
Yes, big fan as well. A pandemic hobby you plan to continue?
So my kids are obsessed with Lego, and I have recently got into creating adult Lego. You'll see some pieces on my, those are Lego flowers actually behind me. And I have a bunch of Lego city sets. So that I think is something I will continue.
Love it. And your favorite vacation destination?
Anywhere with a beach, with maybe no internet actually, because forcing myself to really sign out, and good food. Good food has to be there. I think the last vacation actually we took was to London, England, and it was a blast. Great food, pre-pandemic, of course.
I am actually heading somewhere on a beach with very spotty Wi-Fi and excellent food in about a week. So I am right there with you and share the same sentiment. Thank you so much, Kulsum. This was awesome. I'm so appreciative of your time. Frankly, it's been an honor getting to share this experience with you. So thank you so, so much. And thank you to our viewers for tuning into this fireside chat. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.